Right. Good evening. I will call to order the meeting of the Program Subcommittee of the City of Gloucester School Committee. Today is Wednesday, October 6, 2021. And it is a little after 6:15, and that's on me. Thank you for your patience. I suppose we just do a quick roll call, Maria, right?
Yes. Joel,
Here.
Samantha. Here. And Laura.
Here.
All right, cool. It's not on the agenda, but I suppose there's that disclosure at the beginning, right? Pursuant to the governor's orders relating to the COVID-19 pandemic emergency, wherein the public is not able to attend this meeting in person to the greatest extent possible, the public will be able to participate remotely, i.e. a public Zoom link that is located on the City of Gloucester website. And this meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom, recorded for future viewing via Zoom. And anyone, there is no public hearing and no public testimony expected, who needs to chime in from the public, there is a raise hand feature that would go to any non-subcommittee members of the school committee who are attending simply as members of the public, currently of which there are none. Okay, we'll just dive right on in.
Let's dive in.
All right, so we have the first item on the agenda is overview of ESSER 3, what opportunities it provides to the district, and what the obligations of the district are in receiving these funds. And is that Greg?
It's I'll be doing it as well as Ben.
Okay.
I just realized that I do need to sign in if I'm going to share the presentation. So
Oh, right.
Send you a link.
okay.
You just sent it to us as well.
So if somebody wants to stall with a joke or something.
Dead hair, oh no.
Got nothing.
I got things I'd say, I can't even say.
Maria, when did you send that to me?
What did 7 say to
I'm
8?
doing it right now.
Oh, okay.
This is what I hear at my house. Yeah.
Okay.
What did 7 say to 8?
I like your belt.
Ha! I've never in my life heard that.
Really?
It was always like, why was like 6 scared of 7 because 7, 8, 9.
Oh, right. No, I
Right.
think it's supposed to be what 0 say to 8.
Oh,
like your
sure.
belt.
There you go. Yes.
But I messed it up. But yeah, that's a big one in my house.
I'm gonna add you to just in case as well.
I can't believe I loved it, but it's still good.
Yes, we have a lot of and it's entirely my fault. We have a lot of guess what chicken butt going on in the house right now.
Wow.
Yeah, from the other room, because like there's like 3 of them that can speak English from my children, right? Just hear from the other room. Hey Dad, guess what? And I'm like, oh, what? Chicken butt. Like, I'm like, oh, well, you know.
Well.
Sometimes it's a chorus. Sometimes like they're in different rooms, but they hear me falling for it, and they like all chime in. So that at least that belt joke at least has some
Yeah, the belt's got something.
something clever about that. You
0 say
know?
to 8, I like your belt.
We're just doing blue comedy at my house apparently.
Sorry, just need to turn off my speaker. And let me share my screen.
Recording in progress.
And in addition to being muted, is your volume like all the way down to?
Oh.
There you go.
Okay, looks like we're all set. So I'm gonna get back to the beginning of the presentation. I'm gonna go through quickly on some of these because you have seen many of them were similar for ESSER 2, some of the requirements. You've also seen a couple preview presentations on this, so there may be some, unless you stop me, I'll go through fairly quickly. As an overview, the allocation is for $4,417,611. The expenditures, the qualified expenditures can go back as far as March 20th. though we will not be doing that through September 30th in 2024. There have been prior updates to the whole school committee on June 23rd, August 25th, and September 22nd, and BNF subcommittee meeting presentations on the 24th of August and September 15th. So those have been, you've seen a fair amount of this leading up to it. So allowable uses, there are a lot of them. I'll let you take a quick look at that. Low income, McKinney-Vento. There are a number that you would expect. One of the key pieces to focus on are the top two. Those are definitely a priority. The student mental health service and sports, as well as addressing learning loss, is a big one. As well as many of the items from ESSER 2, our response to coronavirus, supplies, summer school after school activities. So these are all allowable uses. There is no supplement or supplant restriction. It can really be used for quite a wide range of things. The additional requirements in ESSER 3, there's a reservation we have to meet of 20% more of the fund, or more of the funds have to address lost instructional time. There are a variety of ways to do that. That can be either through direct instruction, tutoring, but it also can have to do with strengthening programs or providing curricula that will help students better fill in those gaps and make progress. There's a requirement this time to consult with stakeholders to determine best use of funds. We're not allowed to reduce any per pupil or full-time equivalent staff. And we're not allowed to reduce the per pupil allocation that we spend. And then within 30 days of receiving the funds, we have to make a return to in-person instruction plan, which is a little bit like the cart before the horse, or actually way behind in this case, because we've already submitted the return to in-person instruction plan, and the plan that we submitted to DESE last year qualifies as meeting that requirement. We did get a number of forms of staff, family, and community input. There was a survey in the spring with 259 responses from parents. Again, this fall in September, input from staff, parents, and community members, 468 responses. Then actually we did recently did a community stakeholder group also in September. And then there's a review of input to school committee and review of input with GTA and GAPE leadership. From the spring, you can see some of the responses. Some of the key pieces were more mental health and emotional support for students. Right up there was programs to help parents support children with anxiety, stress, depression, and other mental health challenges. And the third and fourth, after-school programs to help students who have not made progress, and programs to help high school students identify a path. Those were the top ones in the spring. This is just a different way of looking at it if you like pie charts. And then this fall, in September, in an additional community needs assessment survey to staff, parents, and community members, I pulled one of the central questions from it, which is, which of the following resources do you feel will be most helpful? And that matches the information you saw from the spring. And the top three priorities I've put in bold, these are in the order of appearance. Additional staff to provide instruction and intervention to students to close learning gaps in the areas of mathematics. Sorry, other pieces were cut off.
Sure.
Language arts as well. 53, that was up there, that was the second highest. The first was providing additional mental health services and supports to students and families to connect students and families to other mental and behavioral health supports. That's 54%, and school facility repairs and improvement also made it to the top three this time. So there's some different responses in the fall, spring and the fall. So based on the input from surveys, the data, the information that was gathered from school leaders, from staff members, from the community forum, these, I'm going to go through the grant submission expenditures by category, and they're not by DESI category necessarily, but they're more of a sort of thematic categories. Under that very important supporting social, emotional, mental health, these are the things that ESSER 3 will be supporting. And this is over for many of these, it's over the span of FY 22, 23, and 24. So additional adjustment counselors at Beeman and O'Malley School, a counselor clinician at the high school, district-wide BCBA, guidance counselors at the summer school and also extended year, mental and emotional health coordinator, that's a new district-wide position, an additional PACE program, you know about the PACE program from the high school. That's something we had hoped to also add to the middle school, and that is funded under ESSER 3. And then Project Adventure has a program that began last year with the high school. You've heard a little bit about it. We had to downsize the scope a little bit, and they ended up working really closely with the Gloucester Alternative program and other focused areas in the high school, and that involves not only student mentoring, direct mentoring, but it also involves extensive staff training. So that's under the social, emotional, mental health. I'm going to go quickly because I know there are a number of things on the agenda, but if there's anything you want me to stop on, please just shout. Yeah.
So on the Project Adventure, just 'cause we mentioned this in one of our full meetings, and I was a little unclear. So this is staff training for GHS teachers on this project, on this program.
Yes.
And
Yes.
for students to mentor other students.
Yeah. So that's it's a bit of a train the trainer kind of thing. So where the Project Adventure counselor who comes to work with students is also training the staff at the same time, so that we're not reliant on that kind of service over time.
And are they doing actual sort of outdoor adventure?
That had been, yes, that's a part of it.
Okay.
That's not most of it.
Okay.
But there is adventure-based, but mostly it's on site.
Okay.
Is the mental and emotional health coordinator, is that Amy Kim? Or is that
That's
something
Amy
different?
Kim.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's already happened.
That has already happened. Yeah.
Most of this has already.
Most of these many of these, the first year is funded under ESSER 2.
Yeah.
And then a number of these, ESSER 3 picks up year 2 and 3. Some of it covers all three, but many it's year 2 and 3.
And then year 4, the year fall off the.
Yeah, we're not gonna talk about that one tonight. Well, I'm not gonna, but you
Sure,
might.
no, I mean, Ben, maybe you can chime in, but otherwise, after the 3rd year, these positions either need to get wrapped into the budget or otherwise, you know.
Yeah, so let me chime in, Joel, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So the way we're thinking about it now is that actually we would like to start shifting over some of these each year in the upcoming 3 years. So for example, the mental health and emotional coordinator and there should be I think we'll look at special education coordinator at the high school. Like those are at this point probably they are the top 2 priority to get on the operating budget. So presumably if, depending how the budget goes, if there is space for additional positions, then we would start moving over some of the higher priority ones in FY 23. If that works, thereby freeing up some more money in this grant, and then would do the same thing for a few more positions, or maybe a couple more positions each year, for the highest priority ones in terms of which ones we want to actually have ongoing. And I think one of the highest priorities certainly is this area right here. You know, these needs continue to grow. We had a fantastic professional development opportunity yesterday for all of our K-8 staff, paras, and teachers on, you know, just supporting kids with behavioral needs. And the point I'm making is this area is really high priority. And so, you know, it's probably one of the highest priorities. These positions here are probably some of the higher priority ones that we want to shift over the operating budget, you know, year by year, as opposed to all of a sudden in 2020, FY25, you know, we're scrambling to do a whole bunch of them. Am I making sense?
Yes, thank you.
So under the category of learning loss, this includes both instructional staffing and curriculum. So we would be adding instructional paraprofessionals, educational support professionals in math and literacy. They would work, you've heard from our coaches pretty regularly, they would work to provide interventions directly under the guidance of the coaches at the schools. This would include funds for before and after school tutoring. Summer school, we had a very successful summer school program last year, and this is something that will continue to be funded. There are some online tutorial intervention and credit recovery programs, Lexia, Edmentum, Raz Plus, and then some the addition of specialized instructional materials like Rabo, Wilson, and Orton Gillingham.
Sorry, what are those?
These are intensive reading interventions, often used by special education teachers. And we've had Rabo training not last year, but the year before and the year before. So this is to finish out some of the materials if we need to add a little bit more to each school.
Okay.
Greg, if just me adding to that a little bit, this is one of the areas we're seeing. If you remember my entry plan, we talked about tier 3 support, you know, multi-tiered system of supports, tier 1, core instruction, tier 2, and then tier 3. And this is an area where we're really seeing we need to support our tier 3 interventions, which require specialized instruction. That's for special education students and those without identified disabilities. And what we see when we're looking at our students and analyzing how they're doing is many of them, when they're struggling with literacy, which of course always also affects math, is they need, there's a specific area of the sort of, you know, reading skills that they're missing. And by training our staff, and that could be paraprofessionals and teachers, in some of these specialized instructional approaches, we can really target those students and exactly what they need. But our folks, we don't not only need the folks to be trained properly, but also then those materials as well. So this is a real area where we can really support students who either have struggled with learning loss recently or have identified struggles in specific areas of reading skills. Very important piece that we're have identified recently. We need more work on.
A portion of the funds will go to support core math and literacy program adoptions. We have Reading Street at our elementary school, for example, is now 10 years old. And there's a pilot going on this year, and to support any purchase and implementation of a new core reading program at the elementary schools requires some substantial funding that we would have had to budget for a number of years. So this will help in that area.
So that because the program that's in place is becoming dated and needs to, there's, you know, better ways of doing this, or because we're just out of actual physical resources that go with the program?
No, it's the program itself is dated. It's one of the right around adoption of Common Core across the country. It was sort of the first generation of programs that were being developed, and there's been a lot of refinement since then. It's also quite a bit better there's quite a bit better material out there with deeper content knowledge than we have in Reading Street. And then there's the sort of cultural, the aspects of the program that have really moved on, the cultural awareness and representation of authors and works. So there's just some important work that's happened in that area space for the last.
So like until recently, you know, Easy Street was useful, right? This was not. I've heard Easy Street spoken about positively
Oh, yeah.
most of my time.
Yeah.
And so it's just better that, you know, something can be good and they're going to be better than what there was.
Yes,
right?
yeah. Finally, the band program took a real hit over the last 18 months. And so we were not able to do the elementary, which usually is 4th and 5th grade, centralized program at the middle school. We did not do those. So they lost half of the year before, all of last year, and the first month of this year. What that does is that's a ripple all the way through the program. So the number of students who are coming into the middle school program and then therefore into the high school is way, way down. So in order to double and triple our efforts this year to sort of get that back on, it's not something we would do every year, but we really need to pour a fair amount of resources into getting a lot of kids into the program, having them, Adam did some quick work to see how we might be able to get busing for kids to go after school to O'Malley. Carlos Menezes and the elementary music teachers put together a really nice proposal for really improving and strengthening that program, particularly for the next year to get those kids back in. So that's part of what we will support with this.
So there'll be an additional instructor.
One of the things that will involve is instructors, instrumental instructors who are typically come from surrounding towns or may work at a college and come here for the afternoon to teach. We will have, instead of 3, we might have 6.
Okay.
And then what the hope is that some or all of those who do the after school twice a week would also be able to start during the last 2 hours of the school day at O'Malley, so they can provide breakout sessions. So where Carlos might be working with one group, somebody might work with let's see, I don't have, it's probably like brass, trombones might work, saxophone, the students might work over here, but he would be able to work with percussion and they might work with this group. So very hard to do all together.
Yeah.
Especially if kids are all just in the early stages, it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to send them off to practice if they don't have the skills yet.
Yeah.
So what the hope is that he'll be able to do his core instruction and then at the same simultaneously there'll be that kind of work going on from dedicated people.
And so we already sort of do that. We pay for outside instructors to come in.
Yes, but for after school.
Okay.
Twice a week.
I had no
And
idea.
so what we would do is increase the number of instructors so we can serve more students, but also fold them into the school day.
Just follow up, after school at O'Malley or?
At O'Malley.
And so you have 4th and 5th graders bus to O'Malley?
Yeah,
And working with the middle school kids or working with their own grade level?
they have their own grade level. And then the hope is that as they progress a little bit, they will be able to then
Right.
play with and perhaps hopefully perform with older students. But their instruction is largely, because we had at the high point in 2018, 2019, we had about 100, over 100 4th and 5th graders. So it was a 50 at a time is a large group to work with
Right.
when they're learning an instrument.
Mm.
So you can see why we need a number of tutors and instructors that also separate.
And how do you work with those kinds of numbers, even if it's 30, with COVID protocols and wind instruments?
And all the DESI protocols, as well as the, I think they're called bell covers.
Oh, okay.
There are sort of masks for the end of the
For the instruments.
instruments. yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Special education in this category, supporting extended school year at all levels. Special education teachers at 6 through 12. Ben mentioned the special education leadership at the high school. We've included funds for any compensatory services that might be needed. We've put some sort of insurance funding into the Commonwealth Virtual Academy in case we need, if we have a medically fragile student who really, can't attend in person, we'll be able to provide a virtual option through tuition to Commonwealth Virtual Academy. And then in case we have need of formal hospital tutoring, which we usually have a certain amount we spend every year, in case we need to increase that, there's a overage is included in ESSER 3.
Now, does that include home and hospital tutoring? Does that include like mental health emergencies and hospitalizations?
Yeah.
And does this category include sort of the numbers of kids that we need to send out to outside schooling? No, okay, that's still through
That's,
the state
Yeah.
funding. Okay.
yeah. Under communications, we are using a product called Kinvo, which allows us to daily or even multiple times per day to identify students who are absent or absent, and to be able to do two-way messaging that's translated in over 100 languages. And it's we're already finding, and the way this is used in other districts is rather than receiving a robocall or something like that, it's actually a text that can be sent to a small group of students, and so that the parent will receive that text in a timely fashion, but also will receive it in their home language and can respond in their home language and translates it back. So we'll get this down to the teacher level, and we'll be able to use it for more than just attendance. Be able to use it for any kind of outreach, and any kind of outreach that, or even one-to-one kind of thing that needs back and forth dialogue. The nice thing about it is all of it's logged. So there's and it's also accessible. So let's say you have 5 members of a team who are working closely around supporting a family, rather than not knowing who's made a call about what and when and who discussed this. The team can all see all the communications, so that they know we're overdoing it, or we haven't done it yet. So it's a way of keeping track of that as well. A little bit later, I'll give you an update on attendance works, but part of that is funded from ESSER 3. The city, through their health department, had a grant to pay for the other half. This will also fund a part-time community engagement and outreach coordinator, which we've talked about for a long time as a need.
Can I ask one more question about Kindle?
Yep.
Just assuming there's families without access to the kind of materials they would need for text or anything else, I mean, can this do the simple translation of like sheets going home in backpacks? What I'm thinking about.
You can send an email, which is translated as well. We find that nearly every parent has a phone and receives texts, and not more so than having an email list.
I'm thinking about, again, from another meeting, how Plum Cove had a better number of kids signing up for pool testing. And one of the things that Ben said was that because they sent home sheets in their backpacks.
Yeah.
And I really have thought about that. So just as a way of, it just seems like that's a way of communicating that we may neglect, but that may.
Well, if we want to do printed materials, we can use, there are a number of translation ones that connect right to Google Docs.
Okay,
and you can just translate it. And
right, you don't need this for that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
And I think that's an area, Laura, that, we want to get, we want to develop the muscle, so it's an automatic thing. When we sending something home, that we don't think after the fact, let's translate it, just that's an ongoing sort of practice or procedure we have to more fully develop. But Greg's correct that, Kinvo itself doesn't help with that, but we have translation ability for documents pretty easily already.
Okay, thanks.
And under safety and physical plant, air quality, as you are probably aware, a large number of Medify air filters were purchased and distributed out to the schools. Those will require consumable in the form of filters. So we've included funding for those at 4 of the elementary schools, GHS and O'Malley. Continued contracted cleaning services at preschool and St. Anne's. Tent rental, the Beaman Summer Program is really assisted by having a large tent for, especially when it gets very hot or, for a more expanded area to be able to work in. So we'll continue to do that hopefully next summer. And then 2 upgrades to playgrounds to improve handicap accessibility of the playground and the structures, and that would be Beaman and Plum Cove.
So that means like replacing the
Yes,
playgrounds.
possibly not the entire playground, but replacing
Probably
and
Beaman, you'd be-
enhancing.
Right, even likely you'd be replacing the whole playground because there's
Yeah.
nothing left, but maybe
There's
not
nothing left
Plum
that's
Cove.
to code.
Yeah,
Just a
That's good news.
clarification moving forward as we go for the next 2 years. There's no E on St. Anne's, it's just ANN. It's not as bad as when someone says O'Malley, which I understand how you pronounce that word everywhere else, but in Gloucester it's O'Malley.
got it.
I know, oh God.
So we've been talking about
Okay.
O'Malley Middle School, I go, busted.
Not from here.
What's the timing on the playground?
I
You don't know.
don't know that answer, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not sure of that at this point. We have to get through some other significant capital projects such as the modulars, and I think that probably would, yeah, anyway, so, but we're gonna be bringing a few things forward in the next month or 2 related to preschool and administration and also the modulars, and so,
Well,
we'll go through
aren't the
those things.
modulars contingent on a whole bunch of other things, whereas a playground could be more sort of
But we want to make sure we have the funding for modulars, whereas we know we have funding for this. So just in terms of our capacity to manage design processes for multiple things, not that we need design processes for modulars, but, just
Doesn't that
want to,
go the other way, Ben?
what's that, what do you mean?
The funding for the modulars and ESSER 3 funds are wholly separate, right? So if the playground's coming out of ESSER 3, whether or not modular, I mean, unless you're saying that we have to reserve ESSER 3 funds because they may need to be used to supplement modular expenditures. And that's why we can't expend ESSER 3 funds on playgrounds until we know the modulars are funded. Is that the
I
suggestion?
guess what I'm saying is I'd like us, meaning myself and the school committee and our staff and DPW to do the work in a very short, in a short time frame here to button up what the project is for modulars and get funding for that, soon, rather than, spending that time and energy on design processes for the playgrounds. If we can cross those hurdles, quickly the next 2 months for decisions on the modulars and funding, then those, get underway, because that, once they're underway, they take less time and effort from our staff, and then we can transition to, figuring out timeline, project scope, design of the playgrounds.
You can't just, you can't just say to a building principal, here's your budget, here's a catalog. Let us know in the next 10 days what you want out there, we'll order it. This has to go through a committee?
You mean school committee, or when you say a
Well,
committee?
anything like.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
So what I had always been told about playgrounds is that it was PTOs and community members were fundraising for it. So to me, it just seems like if we had the funding for it, let's push it back on the PTO to think about the design. Because like that, I don't think that necessarily needs to fall on the district's plate. I think that the school really should take the lead in trying to figure out within that budget that we have, what they want out there. And I do think it's, I mean, Beaman in particular, it's really important that we move this forward.
Yeah.
Like
This
it's
year.
it's really, really bad. It's not fair. It's not fair for those students. So I think if we can try to encourage some parent involvement on that end to take that off our plate, you know, that's what I would encourage. I don't know how.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
people
Even
feel about it.
PTO has already been sort of front and center on this.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really committed to this. So we could, I mean, if, I understand what you're saying, Ben, that you want to get the design and the modulars and some of the funding set, but I do think there is a group organized and sort of ready to move as soon as they know the funding is there. And I think we could use that. I mean, I think they would be willing to take that on and start, you know, just start thinking about it within the school. Yeah.
right,
I agree.
preserve effort by delegation, not by delaying it.
Sure, I hear you. That makes, those are helpful suggestions. Let me, let me take those and let me check in with the principals as well. And then, yeah, we'll get it going. That makes a lot of sense.
That'd be great. And then my second question is, are we no longer thinking of any tents at the schools for the school year? I mean, now we're getting toward the end of the fall season of that. But for the spring, I mean, what I had heard from the teachers and from the administrators is that was very useful last year. And it turned out having that ability for kids to go outside for things was helpful for the learning.
It was quite useful last year, especially when we had real space issues. Those are less of an issue this year. They also, obviously, as you know, were used for lunches, but that was with bagged lunches. And they were very clear with us is like tents usefulness as with lunches at this point is less so because we're actually serving lunches. So we kept on asking, and principals were really clear that for this fall, it didn't, they didn't need them. They weren't helpful at this point. So that's why we've only focused on the summer programs because that is helpful with hot buildings for folks to get out. So at this point, we're operating that last year was great. This year, they're not needed.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And just to wrap things up here, you saw the sort of thematic categories, and then if you're interested, this is how Desi likes to see them. So those all roll up into these totals of professional salaries, support salaries, stipends, pension, contracted services, supplies, and other, and that's the grand total.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, sure.
Related to physical plant. So these Meta5 air filters, are these freestanding air filters in the classrooms?
Yes.
Those are okay.
Yeah.
And how many classrooms have those?
I don't know the total, Ben. It seems to me it was.
I think we've got 170 of the larger ones, which are full-size classrooms. And then I think 30 or 40 of the smaller ones, which are for like offices or small learning,
A lot.
work groups. So that's the 4 elementary schools. And then not all, but many in O'Malley and GHS, where they don't have central air, which is already filtered, where they have univents. So that's sort of a variety of classrooms at high school and O'Malley.
So
That was the intention. But
West
not at West
Parish.
Point. What? Sorry?
I'm sorry, I'm just wondering because my assumption has been, or my understanding has been that West Parish, because it's so much newer, has a much more state-of-the-art airflow system, both for heat. I don't know about cooling. So
Yes.
are the older schools being given the same?
No,
Air-
so West Parish doesn't have them.
Okay, that's what
For the reason you just stated, Laura.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that explains it. Thank you.
So
Anything else?
No.
Ben, you had something to say?
Yeah, just wanted to, I mean, I think a couple things. One, I hope the subcommittee sees that, this is, we've prioritized some very important areas. I hope that's clear, first of all. Social emotional health, mental health support, learning loss, specifically social education as well. And then also at the same time, been able to, I think, pretty impressively, do a wide variety of support a wide variety of areas, obviously from the band program to playgrounds, moving sort of beyond supporting, making one-time purchases for curriculum materials, which are like a really very good approach with these sorts of dollars. So I think if you agree with that, I hope you do, but it's sort of deep, but also broad. Another piece is, this is obviously a significant amount of dollars. It's about just over 3% of our annual budget for 3 years, which is, in some ways a lot, some ways can be used, relatively quickly, depending on what we spend on. But the point I'm trying to make, or the question I have is, what's helpful either for the committee and for the general public to communicate about these dollars and ways to communicate them. And if you have any thoughts on that, it certainly would be helpful to myself and Greg and our staff. How do you help people understand, the plan here, the intent, but also the impact it's going to have?
That would be
Yeah.
for the communications subcommittee.
I think the focus areas personally, and I'd love to know what you guys think, but I think sort of looking at this in the sense of broad focus areas with some specifics is the way to go. I mean, people can't take in all of this, obviously. I mean, it's very important detail, but it's not from a messaging perspective. But I think what you just said, Ben, just, everything from making sure we can communicate with people in multiple languages, which is critical, to, we'll hear about attendance works. Anyway, I just feel like there's so much, and the band program and learning loss and improving our playgrounds. I think there's so much, but if you go by focus area with some detail, just some bullet point detail. Yeah. We could talk more about how you get that out, but I think there's ways to do that.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of it, besides, I think the questions that we had in relation, just some clarification on some of the areas, everything is pretty clear. Like, to me, it seems like it would be pretty easy to sort of get this information out to the public, because none of it's really too difficult for just general public to wrap their heads around. But I agree with Laura that, like, start with the headings of the certain topics, and then give a couple examples, or like a brief, even just like a brief paragraph of like why it's important and what you're focusing on.
Can I ask you a question, Ben?
Sure.
Do you think school families and members of the community are really aware of the fact that there was this big sum of money coming that is separate from our budget, that we have this 4 million plus federal funding coming that is not part of our annual budget?
It's a good question. How much do the folks in general absorb, right?
Right.
In their busy lives, right? So I don't mean to say, and I know, so we got obviously reached out at least twice with folks, and and I think obviously through school committee, but also directly to folks twice, and let them know about this and ask them for input. So and had literally at least 400, and maybe if the two groups didn't overlap, as much as 600 people respond. So that's a lot, right?
Right.
And they were asking, responding to the direct questions about how to spend these additional federal dollars. I mean, it wasn't just some imaginary money. We actually named it, right? So, but I'm not that confident that folks know a lot about it, or they may have heard about it, but I don't want to be. I think there's probably room for more, I guess.
I don't think many people know about this at all.
Right, but I think
even people who answered that questionnaire do not fully understand.
But I still think you could still do we heard you. Like, I think it's really important to go back to the email list and say, we're listening, and here's what we came up with.
Yeah.
and here's how we use that information. That was really important because also you want to encourage people to respond in the future,
Mhm.
right? So we heard you, here's what we're doing. Look at all the great things we can bring to Gloucester Public Schools with this funding.
We heard you, but we're also paying attention because a
Right.
lot of what the community had asked for, you guys are already seeing. And,
Yeah.
you know, you've already hired some of this. You've already
Right.
put this in place before you can put that community survey out there. So
Right.
it's very much aligned with what the community thinks we need, right? Which I
Yeah.
think is just a strength.
And something to really push on, yeah, like, yeah.
And you know, Sam, you said something very important. I mean, we really are already seeing the positive impact of these dollars, you know, in terms of, you know, we have another BCBA and that's, I think, for the first year from ESSER 2, but, you know, that's having a real positive impact on staff and also students in at least 2, if not 3, actually, I'd say 3 of our buildings, right? You know, and then also, obviously, with Lisa Williams as the special education coordinator at the high school, you know, without a doubt, you know, those special education teachers are getting, you know, not only better support, but like better attention and better, you know, just collaboration. And then the last piece is Amy Cam taking on this position where she's, you know, formally looking across, you know, she already has developed or put into place, you know, consults with some really, really expert folks who, you know, I think I shared one of them at a school committee meeting, you know, just really high quality consults about how to support students we have, you know, and so that's just, those are examples of just how it's already really impacting our staff positively and also students positively, but, you know,
Yeah,
just.
I mean, I look at the list for social emotional learning and I'm like, yes, 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 yes. Like, I'm just psyched to see sort of the range of supports that you guys are putting into place. Where is the BCBA located? What school?
Well, it's across schools. So
Okay.
we had 2 in the district, now we have 3. Our new, and so the new person is Brianna, I can't remember her last name, sorry, has been really focusing at West Parish, Beaman, and high school.
Okay.
And that's, you know, playing a really great role, as I said, both staff and students, you know, I mean, a lot of what we're working on is, you know, helping, we're able to, because of Katie Provost's approach, because of Lisa Williams' approach, because of Amy Cam's approach, because of Brianna, you know, it's really, I'm not sure if it's a shift because I was only in here last year, but I think real good attention on helping staff develop skills to then help students develop skills, you know, and that's I'm not sure if that's a new approach, but it's certainly very powerful. I'm seeing already how it's very powerful for our staff, our teachers, and therefore our students. So just we've got some good things going just this year because of these dollars.
Else?
Yeah, that was super helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a few questions. Waiting for a chance to get in here. So the first off is recently the school committee received a very thorough presentation. And one of the main points that was sent to us was cautioning against doing too much and spreading oneself too thin. And I saw several slides with several bullet points. It sounds like we are doing a lot with ESSER 3 money. That seems to me to at least on the surface, contradict what we had heard recently about not taking on too many new things and instead focusing on a limited number of things and doing those well.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think I asked you all to keep asking that. So I appreciate that. So, you know, I think if you match up the entry plan and sort of the priorities there and this, you'd see some real consistency, you know. So how do we, you know, mental health and support, right? Another area was how do we connect to, you know, have kids connect to school and have leadership opportunities, you know, so connecting to school is something is about, you know, partly about playgrounds, but even more so about band, you know. You know, supporting our tier 3 is something that we talked about, you know, and so as I mentioned around specialized reading instruction, that's supporting that. So what I want folks to see here is that these things are aligned with and you know, deepening our work. If we start coming out with things that are, you know, in priorities in addition to these things, then I think you need to be very concerned. But I see there being alignment with what I shared in terms of priorities, where we need to work. But the other piece is, the crucial piece here is that, I mean, for me anyway, my approach is that as we develop the ongoing plan for improvement, that, we're not adding to these things. These are things that we're utilizing and leveraging, to go down the path we want to go. And I'm fairly confident that these things will be in alignment and not necessarily in addition, and not in addition to. But it's the right question to keep asking,
Can I just,
Yeah.
so what I heard was that we don't want to do too many new things at once, right? When I look at this list, I look at this as sort of supporting a lot of what we're already doing, not necessarily starting something new.
Hiring a lot of new positions.
But like the new positions are supporting the good work that we're already doing. Like if you look at the adjustment counselors, the behavior analysts, we already have those positions in our schools. We just need more support right now. We're not really changing our programming at all. We're just bolstering it. So that, I don't see anything here that's like brand new and sort of off the chart from our goals.
No, that's fine. As I said, at least on the surface, just seemed, and so I appreciate the response. The second thing that I was surprised, so I, as a parent, got the survey and I answered. I was surprised that the administration, not that the parent responses said this, but one of the things that I've, again, in my time in the school committee, been told over and over and over again, is that one of the things this district struggles with from a position of making sure that all students are able to receive an education is language barriers. And the sheer number of English language learners, especially at Vets and Beeman, are just, prohibitively high to be able to address the needs of all these students. And, someone the other day was talking about, some sort of comparative score thing. And I almost had the kind of jaded response of like, oh, well, it's because the English language learners and we can't, it's too much money to support them, to help them be MCAS ready by the time it comes around, sort of thing, right? And to me, I'm not surprised that a survey, that went out to parents who responded to the survey may not have been thinking about that, right? And maybe things that were maybe more affecting themselves. But I was surprised to see that we aren't, as a district, we're like, oh geez, here's this money that we've been talking about is missing. The missing piece of this puzzle to provide the support for English language learners was money. And the English language learners, have a direct impact on our ability to communicate the successes of our district and to provide all our students an equal education. I was surprised there's nowhere in this package of finding support for them. I'm curious if that was discussed.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the reason is as, in your budget for this year, you increase that work and support very substantially, so what we'll be able to do is have a K-8 family liaison who's working, with our schools and partners, and also a 9 to 12 one as well. Both are bilingual, and then also the other way we're working on that, and then also an EL teacher as well, and that expand our work, and that specifically at Beeman to make that, and also at O'Malley, the two schools that needed the most additions in that. So and then also, as you see here, Kinvo is really a powerful communication tool that translates on an individual teacher level, which is something we, and through text message. So that's a piece. And then also, just like, for example, last week we met with Chris Castle, Greg and I met with Wellspring about their language programs they do for EL, for families who are learning English, and how they know that a number of these families have kids in our schools, and so we're now sort of raising that partnership up and that collaboration up, so both we're helping them get more students from our population of families. And then they're also going to be adjusting their curriculum. So part of their curriculum and their English language programs is about, navigating, understanding, working with schools. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is there's a variety of ways to go at this. I feel like you've made some significant investments this year. And then there's also, deepening the partnerships, coordinating the work with other agencies that are, on the same path as we are, working with GEF as well on this, in terms of just some recent ideas on supporting EL families. So, there's also deepening that work, not in ways that just doesn't cost us more dollars. So, yeah.
So are you saying that a reason that the ESSER III funds have not been allocated toward that is that the district is currently set to have adequate programmatic assistance for our ELL students, and we are not going to be lacking or coming up short? You look at this district and go, the one thing this district doesn't need right now is additional ELL, because the investments that have been made outside of ESSER are sufficient to cover the ELL deficit that's been out there for, decade plus.
I think we need more information, more time for more planning, but also an assessment of where we are and how we're doing, in terms of the investments we put in place, rather than at this point, just more and more. So,
Is there room, Ben, is there room in ESSER III, say in the next year, you say, okay, our investments, aren't enough, we need some more. Is there room to make adjustments in ESSER III to add on?
You can amend right up until a couple months before the end of the time.
Yeah.
So it could go right up to 2024.
Wow.
But here's a place where, we're going to have to make some choices going ahead, right? So say, for example, we're able to bring some of the positions that are on ESSER III, into the operating budget, say for the upcoming for FY23, that then opens up money ESSER III, and then we have to make a decision. Okay, we have 2 more years in ESSER III. What's a good use of those funds? And it may be, and in this area, obviously, we won't be resolved. We won't be doing things perfectly this year on supporting EL families, but we may at that point have a better idea of, an investment in this area, would be well used and well utilized. So that's another way with flexibility, is as we bring things, off the ESSER and onto operating, then we free up more money with ESSER and then can reallocate that, as Greg was describing.
That's fine. If the other members don't mind, just so Adam isn't here all night, you want to just skip down the agenda to transportation?
Sure.
And then that way you can, it's a lovely library, but you don't want to be on your time. Like holding on to the last possible minute, like, oh, you're trying to leave. Oh, well.
That's smart.
So if we can just skip down to item 2D, just to receive an update on transportation protocols regarding familiarizing families with drivers and routes, familiarizing drivers with families, and ongoing improvements to beginning of year protocol.
See, you need me too out of my habit. Oh, there you go.
I'm far away. It's a distance. Like the graphic.
So some quick transportation updates for tonight. Go over a couple of things where we're going. Look at some of the route stuff that we've been working on, how we're handling some bus stops, acclimating students and families, our continued work and some recommendations, as I depart for going forward, in the school committee and the department in general. So as far as our bus routes, our bus schedules, we are narrowing the late arrivals. Traffic has started to slow down in the city, although Monday and Tuesday was great. It rains. Today it picked back up because the sun's back out. So we are still dealing with a little bit of traffic, but it is starting to peter out, hopefully getting our buses to where they need to be at the right time. I was on a bus today, actually, as a bus monitor this morning because we were short. So I got to see how some of that operated, and it was pretty crazy. Bus registration, we continue to have students added in that bus registration, so we're constantly adding students. I've developed a notification system so that we're able to notify the driver when a new student's added instead of printing an entire route sheet right away. Where they're going, what bus they're going on, it gets put in their box, it's bright and green, and they can have that stuff. We did start late routes. The 3:30 one started a while back ago. And we now started this week the O'Malley 4:15, so they're having their O'Malley Academy Monday, Thursdays, and Fridays. So we are running a 4:15 late bus. Those are seeing a large population of students, in addition to CADA. Those are lasting about an hour and 15 minutes long, to get kids to East Gloucester, West Gloucester, downtown. So those are going pretty well. The 3:30, we're seeing maybe 5 or 6 students at this point. And then adjusting schedules. So every time that those principals and I talk, we say, okay, well, this bus is consistently not getting here until 3:45, or they can't get here, they're getting here at 2:30 and then 2:45 because of the parent line for Plum Cove. We're adjusting those bus schedules and trying to get them updated as best as possible and get that communication out to families. So that's where we are with the routes. It's still a constant work in progress as we go through.
So you're saying like Plumco, a bus trying to get to Plumco sometimes gets stuck behind parent?
Yeah,
bus,
so we
you
have
know?
one that can get there because her route is Lanesville and back, so she gets there. They save her spot at 2:30. The other bus is now going Centennial Ave downtown and coming back. It's gonna fight all the Washington Street traffic to get back to Plum Cove. She's now gets behind the traffic and can't get up in there because it's now 2:40, 2:45. So we have a 15-minute delay getting her up in there and out. I would say getting her out at 2:45. She's usually there about 2:35, 2:40, load and go. But it's just the line of traffic that she gets behind, getting traffic in and out of there.
There's no ability to stop outflow and let her come up the wrong side or anything like that? Or is that totally not allowed because you can't have buses violating traffic even on property?
We've looked at that. It's just hard for the number of staff that they have to be able to put out there to
Sure.
stop traffic. And then that small circle to try to get her in
While there's cars.
while
in
the cars are
circle.
parked there and that flow. So we're just adjusting our school times, looking at how those our bus stop times, seeing how those are going. At our bus stops, we have a lot of change requests coming in. Safety concerns parents have, questions if they can move bus stops, if they can now be picked up at a different location than they were originally scheduled for. So we're working through all of those changes and getting those arranged for the drivers. Connecting with families, the drivers are doing a lot more connecting with families throughout this process. I'll talk about in a few minutes how we're seeing a lot more of that. I'm getting a lot more emails from families as well saying, I spoke to the driver today, but can you also just remind them that Aunt Smith is going to be picking Sally up at the bus stop today. They're addressing drivers by the names. So there's a lot more communication that appears to be going on with the drivers. We're also working on a communication to families, getting it more communication out. My last email went out to K families Monday, just as a reminder that Tuesday is a half day. It's something that we need to work on as a district and as a department. the number of students who didn't have parents at bus stops is something that we, need to address and look at. Or the misunderstanding that it was a half day. So every one of those parents that aren't at the bus stop can call. Someone's not at the bus stop to pick up so-and-so. I didn't know it was a half day. So we have to go through that whole process to try to get folks. I don't know what the best way to communicate with folks are. We just talked about that with the Kinvo and whatnot, getting that communication out. But I don't know if email is always the best, if, how we go about addressing that.
So quick question, so in that situation on a half day, let's say, were the kids coming back to school?
So the driver usually will wait if they're able to. If they can pull off to a safe place, we'll call the parents.
Oh,
If not, they'll continue their run and come back. Or we'll have, in another instance, we had parents meet the bus at another bus stop further down. At all, as a last resort, we would take kids back to school.
Okay.
I mean,
That's
just
kindergarten only though.
no, this would be for anyone who a driver, so like if a driver notices and observes that, we have third, fourth, fifth graders whose parents are always at the bus stop. And they will call me, is that there's nobody here for them, there's always someone here, can you give them a call? And they won't let them go until somebody's there. So it's not just kindergarten that if a driver observes, now that we're in this month long into this second month, if a driver observes consistently there's a parent there and they're not, that's a red flag to them to say, hey, what's going on?
Sure.
Or if they know that the kid walks to the house and the student can't get in for some reason, for some of our specialized transportation, the parents, can't get in, they'll bring them back on the bus and wait till they can get somebody, family member.
now is that a protocol? Sorry, is that a protocol or is that just sort of like a driver to driver basis?
So that's our best practice. It's most drivers I'm observing since coming here do that.
Okay.
Because they're observant people. And so if they get into a pattern, they like patterns. And if something disrupts that pattern, then that's, a red flag to them.
Okay.
I'm consistently, probably on a daily basis, getting calls that I need to call parents.
So just a couple of things. Are you calling, or is the office calling parents when the person isn't there, or the bus drivers calling?
So I'm calling them.
So the bus drivers call you and say X, Y, and Z, I don't see a parent, I'm gonna pull over and wait, or?
Sometimes they wait, sometimes if I can't get a hold of a parent. Yesterday, some of them took 20 minutes before we got a parent to the bus stop, so they just continued on their route. Some of them went on to the next school and dropped them off on the way, and we just communicate that with parents to try to coordinate getting their child back to.
So can I make a suggestion as a bus
Sure.
parent? So I think it's fantastic that you sent emails to kindergarten parents. I would suggest sending emails to all parents who have kids on the bus. I will say from my bus stop, it was total word of mouth. Like people were really, it's not clear. It's hard to keep track. And I know that in some cases, school calendars from last year went out, not from transportation. And so I think if you're sending that email, I would send it to all school families, just as a practice, if possible.
And that's, to jump off that, that's one of my suggestions when we
Oh,
go forward
okay.
about how we.
And my second question is sort of just from personal experience. So if a bus driver, is a bus driver, in your experience, are the experienced bus drivers actually observing who kids go with?
Yeah, so some drivers have said to kids, if there's not somebody here, that normally come back to the bus and they'll wait, and we've had kids come back to the bus before. A lot of bus drivers will generally observe in addition to watching kids cross the street, making sure cars are stopped, making sure that things are, kids are getting off the bus who are supposed to get off the bus. It's all done kind of simultaneously. I couldn't say it's for sure that everyone's doing it. It's part of the safety training that they go through. There's a lot happening at a bus stop.
No,
unfortunately.
absolutely. I can just speak for my personal bus stop because the timing has changed. The timing changes, it's within like a 10 to 15 minute on the return. And so there are times when I personally am running down the hill because the buses come earlier than ever before. And it's not always clear to me if the bus driver knows, I'm always waving at other parents to say I'm here.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if the bus drivers really watch, it sounds like she is.
He or she, today, I mean, I had one call and say that the parent wasn't at the bus stop, and then 5 minutes later, it was a substitute bus driver. She said, oh, I see her, she's coming down the roadway now. So just a few times that she's driven that route, she knows.
Yeah, okay, that's impressive.
So that's one of the questions I have is that, it seems like because it's just a best practice and because it's just based on the driver knowing, right? When there's that sub situation, if there's a sub on Tuesday and, a fourth grader who happens to always be a parent pickup at the bus stop, otherwise they just see a 9-year-old confidently stroll off the bus and they go, this must be how it goes, have a nice day, and they close the door and they have no way of knowing, and there's no road system for that. The regular driver, and I don't know the answer, I don't know if it's like as simple as like, an iPad mounted in each, like that has like a little student info, like, here's.
So on my next slide.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's
Okay,
fine.
we're not-
So the other.
You have suggestions, so maybe we
yeah,
should.
yeah.
No, that's fine.
But I'm curious, just on programmatic. So as a parent at Vets, we got something, oh gosh, what the heck's that, whatever the program, the website is that we use to communicate, Class Dojo,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
We got a Class Dojo notification, we got an email from Principal Fusco, and we got an all call the night before, being like, hey, just like, did Beaman not get?
Not this year. Normally we do.
Okay,
Normally we get those.
because I'm thinking it shouldn't be necessarily transportation to be
No,
like,
it
hey, it's a
shouldn't.
half day, it should be on like the building, to be like, hey, because it's a half day for everybody.
And normally we do.
Okay,
This year or this week, I don't want to put that on anyone. Normally,
Sure.
we always have that, and it is sent out in a calendar for the month. This, I can't speak to.
okay, I'd be cautious about putting it on shoulders of transportation where like, this is like, because it affects walkers, it affects pick
It's
up and
true,
drop off,
but
right?
for bus drivers, I mean, my perspective, and I'll be curious what yours is like your bus drivers have a specific responsibility, so it's like letting that population know.
Hmm.
is
I mean, our bus
accountable.
driver that morning was like, it's a half day.
Right.
Like, just so you know, and
Right.
everyone was like, thank you, like,
I
I think like every.
I think it's both and, the school
Yeah,
needs to
yeah.
be communicating, Adam needs to be communicating, and then also it's very helpful for with that bus driver, Sam, in terms of the example you gave, the bus driver to like, say it verbally, right? I think all
Yeah,
those
it's
things,
all helpful.
yeah. need to-
And I think our messaging is the other part that we need to be clear about, is that we have a lot of folks who want to, specifically ask the bus driver, what time are they gonna be here, what time are they gonna be here? And so for us, the easiest thing is and I got a lot of calls, but the easiest thing for us to say is just 3 hours earlier. Is what we normally try to do, but I did go on and post, I revamped all of our afternoon routes in our elementary schools, and I did repost an early release schedule that we hope to keep. Unfortunately, we were delayed getting out of O'Malley, which just started the whole afternoon off. There's great to be able to prepare and best practice, but then when that doesn't fall into place and things don't go right.
Where do you post that?
On our website in transportation. So we try to communicate, so if I send out a school messengers type system, of a bus changes, we also post everything on our website, big bold letters at the top, bus changes for today and whatever it may be.
What's your website?
It's just on the Gloucester Schools.
Yeah.
It's just going to the, okay, does that have it doesn't have a standalone?
I'm gonna keep moving, sorry.
Nope. So when we talk about our acclimating with our families, oops. I have this picture of everybody here. So our kindergarten seats are labeled, try to keep them assigned to the first 3 or 4 rows. We have families that have requested that their older child have the younger child sit with them, so we still have that. Bus drivers are dealing with. Our lanyard program worked really well with the schools that did it this year. I think eventually all of them did it. I was on the specialized transportation bus today, and the student was still wearing it because that was really helpful for her. It really was helpful for the drivers. And so, that's one of my suggestions going forward, is that you continue that, start right at the very first day and continue it for probably 2 months. And I'll talk about why here in just a minute. Drivers connected with students, families at the bus stops, that again, that's just continuing. Drivers recognizing when family members are not present at the bus stop, I talked about that just briefly. They're calling in, we're calling parents. We're figuring out where to go with that. Bus drivers and monitors are addressing greater number of students by name, which is something that we always encourage our drivers to make sure that they're doing. And we're getting drivers the student information quicker. And I'm gonna be printing a huge sheet for all of them with all of the contact information for all of our families and our students. Very shortly, I just wanna make sure a majority of our students added before printing that huge document for every driver to have. So it's kind of like an airplane manifest that they're gonna have it on their bus to be able to have that information at their fingertips. So our continued work, communication is key for us. I'm gonna talk about some of the communication pieces specifically. Right now, it's for us in transportation, communication is kind of done in the background. I'm doing a lot of cutting and pasting from our student information system into our school grants, our student messenger system to try to get emails out. So a lot of the emails that I send, I've actually copied and pasted emails from school messenger into our email system to get them out. So I'll work with our student information system person and I'll say, hey, I can send you a list of these students. Can you get me their emails addresses ASAP? And you can usually do that in a short amount of time. We haven't done the full school bus list yet. So being able to send out to everybody that rides a school bus, we haven't gotten that done yet. And we're gonna try to break it down by school bus, enter that information into school messenger so that I can just say, okay, bus 7, we need to send a message to. We can do that. That's the short, sweet, what we have right now. Learning about our students is huge right now. Our drivers are really starting to determine what they may have for special needs, what students are our ELL students, so they're having trying to communicate with our students because we talk about the translation services. We don't have a lot of that in transportation, and our school bus drivers are out there by themselves. So when a student is second language is English, it's hard to determine where they live, where they're supposed to be going. So I'm doing a lot of translating through Google to speak to parents via Kinvo or however else we have to means to communicate to get families home. So providing that information to drivers, driver and bus monitor training, we've started a lot of that so far. We have another one in a couple of weeks. And I hope that will continue beyond my term here. Being able to be back in that training mode and be able to really meet with the drivers as a group is vital. Behavior management is also a huge component we're looking at right now. Now that we've gone from 25 kids to the bus from 50 to 72, we're now cramming a lot of kids that are not close together on a daily basis into a very small space. And so student behaviors is what we're working with the schools. Principals and administration have been great with the drivers to get that addressed very quickly at the beginning. Including making sure that they're not shutting windows. Because now the temperature's changed and it's raining, students are shutting windows. So we're constantly trying to remind students, we don't shut windows. I know it's gonna be cold. We're getting to that cold season. We gotta keep the windows open. So that's a different area we're looking at. Again, the continually addressing students by name and looking for new monitors, crossing guards to fill those positions.
So I have a behavior management question, just what the protocol is. So obviously, we now have video on the buses, which happened since I've been on the school committee.
And audio,
Sorry,
and audio.
and audio, right? What is the protocol? Because obviously the bus drivers, are the only people on the bus, and when there is rowdy and or dangerous behavior, which sometimes parents hear about from their kids. What is the protocol for letting either you or an administrator know about that?
Yeah, so we always, I always encourage if I get an email or a call from a parent to make sure the child lets the driver know. Because a lot of times the driver, is now back to all these students, doesn't know exactly what happens in the back seats. So they need to know about that. Then they can report it to me, or I can start from the report from the parent. I meet with the driver, we pull video, and if we determine that it needs to go to an administrative level, the video gets sent to the administrator with the school bus driver write-ups. So if they know the specific students involved in an incident, they'll write an incident report that we have. And that'll get sent to the driver. If we determine that it's so many students on a bus that they may just had a bad day yesterday, the principal will come out. Or she'll come out to the kids, he or she, they'll address the whole bus, and when they get into the school, they'll address them as a bus again. I can tell you that we've had probably 4 buses addressed by principals,
I know.
and they said that those buses, you could heard a pin drop for the next like week and a half after that.
There's those damn recent kids.
No, it wasn't our bus. It was not our bus, but I know one of the buses. It was not our bus, but.
So the video is a great tool to be able to assist the principals in determining who they need to address versus the whole group.
Right.
But it's also, we're at beginning stages, we want to make sure that everybody gets addressed with the same rules, the same clear procedures that are going. And then usually the administration will let us know what students off the bus were.
So it goes to you and not to the administration of the school.
So it comes to me first, and then I communicate with the administration. The administration and I, or the bus driver, are the only ones that view the video. And then
Okay,
I don't know what the clear policy is
I
here,
think Ben is trying,
but I think Ben has to grant permission for anybody else to be able to see that.
I see.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna chime in that it's also okay for a parent to reach out to, bus driver or Adam or the principal, and then it would, follow the way Adam's described, but there doesn't have to be, we don't want to get in a way, you gotta report to a specific person or it doesn't, get acted on. So,
Okay,
it's absolutely okay for, even a teacher, but I really think in this case, more effective to talk to a principal or Adam or the bus driver. And then,
Okay.
And I will say is that since last year, because I'm able to, I know the camera systems and I'm able to access them, is that before it used to have to go through a request through IT to get the cameras pulled, and so I'm able to go out and do that, download the video and have it done within 10-15 minutes once the bus is back. So we've now gone from a 10-day window of trying to address a behavior to a couple of hours.
great. Thank you.
So just as we're hiring, I see there's 483,000 school bus drivers. That's down from almost 500 something thousand in 2016. So it's, studies have shown it's a decline of about 4.2% every year. Just a quick quote from Walt Disney in Florida.
Not nice, Adam, not nice.
So some of the things going forward that I just wanted to bring up, and I've talked about with a lot of these, is obviously training. Training is huge for me. I wasn't able to get a lot of that done last year with the constraints and whatnot. But that is huge, and I think it would benefit this district for bus drivers is to really start to focus more on not necessarily the Massachusetts training system, but the federal laws as well as federal standards. There is a new entry-level driver training program that's going to be coming out February 22 that all new bus drivers have to follow before they can become certified. So just making sure the drivers are up on that. Communication, improving our communication abilities in transportation is huge. We really lack that ability to be able to get quick messages out or the quick information out to families. Whether it be an accident, a bus is late, or there's a substitute, we really should have that ability. And so we've started that through the Ride 360 app, which I'll explain in just a minute. And then the start of school is really developing that policies and procedures for each school to put those lanyards on students to make sure that we have that ability to get those students identified easily, quickly with the bus drivers.
Can I just add something to the start of the school year? I would love to see like a transportation specific orientation for kindergartners. I've seen in other districts that they do like a ride the bus day where they actually, they go to their bus stop, they get on the bus with their actual bus driver. What I find so interesting is that as a district, we have kindergartners starting after all of the other kids. And that for me feels a little bit chaotic, right? Like, whereas I would love to see kindergartners start before all the other kids so that they get on the bus before it's full of other kids. They get to know the bus driver. The bus driver can see, oh, that's a kindergarten family. There's so many ways that I think that we can make it easier for the bus drivers to identify new students and to new families. So I just think we can tighten that up because there was just so much miscommunication, or just not miscommunication, just confusion about like, how is the driver gonna know who my kid is? How is my kid gonna know where to go once they get off the bus? Nobody really knew, and I'm just speaking as a kindergarten parent. I heard that a lot from other kindergarten parents. There just wasn't a lot of information from the school or from transportation. So I would love to see some sort of like ride the bus day, here's your bus driver, get to know them. If the parents have questions, they can ask the bus driver and they know where to go when they get to school.
That could be helpful too for families that move, I
Yeah.
think Kay wanted East Gloucester, and then like we moved and now I'm a Beaman kid,
Yeah.
and it's a new bus stop and,
Yeah.
there's a trial run day where it's me, the rest of the transplants and the kindergartners.
Right, or new kids to the district.
I think the hard part in the shift in that is registration for kindergarten is done the first
Yeah.
weeks of school. In all the districts I've ever worked in, it was always done in May and June. And so there was always a ride the bus day at that point for students, even if it wasn't their normal bus yet, it was at least a ride the bus with the teachers on there to go out in town, understand what the bus loading and unloading procedures. Then once we started with the kindergartners, our bus drivers went in and actually taught in the classroom.
Yeah.
School bus procedures, and they actually took them out. There was a 30-minute window every week that for the kindergartners to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that procedure should be, somewhere implemented in here.
Yep.
It's just hard where half the kids start one day, the other half starts the next,
Yeah.
and then they all start.
It's
the
a
next.
very confusing
And then you have
process.
a holiday in the middle, and
Yeah.
then, they're not all in together. So it's a very mix of.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I hear you saying is that generally, like, we need to tighten up the start of a school for kindergartens in general, and transportation is just an added benefit or piece to that.
Maybe to that in the next one, because I don't recall it being that, like, even when like.
It was
Gracie-
very disjointed.
No, so like, even like when Gracie went to kindergarten, she's a 2020 graduate, she went to kindergarten, like, I feel like, was this in place, like, this got put in place at some point in modern history, and I'm curious as to, at a future meeting, we can hear from the administration as to why we do the kindergarten start the way we do anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, I read in Massachusetts transportation law, I think, that the students are supposed to do like a training module. And to me, that seems like a really important, like, to speak to your point, right? There are norms and there are rules that exist on school buses that are different than riding on a bus. And my daughter was fixated on the fact that she didn't have to wear a seatbelt, right? That was like a huge topic. So like, it would be helpful, right, for them to sort of just understand that there are just certain things that you can and can't do on buses. And we're just sort of expecting these 5 and 6 year olds to just know what they need to do once they get on there. So I just think, yes, like, more orientation for the kindergarten students would be so super helpful. And for parents, so that parents aren't feeling like, oh my God, I'm just putting my 5-year-old on a bus, bye.
Right. So our routing software looks kind of like this. This is every student in Gloucester at some point. This is what it looks like at the beginning of the year until we start adding students to buses and they start taking them away. But a piece that we're adding this year is what we call Ride 360, and it's a parent app. They download it, they sign up specifically through our webpage, the designated webpage. They have to tell identifying information such as the student ID number in order for them to be linked, family numbers can be linked. And this goes right off of every change that's done in our routing software is updated immediately in that. I can send blast messages out. I can send that a driver's different today. I can send that it's a different bus. All those things can be pushed out to notifications down the road. Eventually, when I talk about some things in technology, you can add components to the bus so that buses could have the GPS module on them so that the
Tracking.
parent could track it
Beautiful.
turn by turn, minute by minute to know where that bus is.
So you know when you start running down the hill,
Yeah.
stand on the way for 15 minutes one day and then.
That's
you
I
know,
love that idea.
Or like, oh, there was an accident.
Right.
So when we talk about start of the school year, again, that Meet the Driver is also one of the program to host families before the school, which we just talked about. Policies, clearly organized school committee level policies is something I talked with Ben about. Is for me, when I first started here trying to find school transportation policies specific, it's kind of, you have to do a search and hope it pops up. Trying to search things in the Massachusetts law. Their web pages are all like one sentence.
Yeah.
continue.
We're trying to create work for other people. Don't go create work for us.
It's just something that I had suggested so that when I reference it with families or us, is that we do that.
I mean, our policies need to
Yeah.
be in a better place anyway.
Yeah.
It's hard to.
And then procedures, develop clear transportation procedures to be followed by all transportation teams, and then clear actions if they're not followed for us. It gets into, I understand it gets into a contractual type thing, but clear actions to what happens if those policies are expectations, clear expectations for drivers around their responsibilities, understanding the role of a school bus driver. As I always try to communicate with folks, and I used to do it at my last district, is we had an administrator drive the school bus day. We'd set up in our high school parking lot and the principals would all come out and drive the school bus. We'd set up a little obstacle course, just to give them a perspective of what the driver sees from that driver's seat.
Wait, sorry, Adam, can you say that again? Obstacle courses, principals driving buses?
Yeah. So our bus drivers would all come out, they'd meet students on the bus, they'd do whatever they, do, and drivers would go through, a procedure type thing. It just gave them a different perspective, so when a driver wrote up a student for A, B, and C, they're like, I know what they mean. I think one of the biggest things that Ben and I have talked about is 7D vehicles. We got into that conversation when the National Guard was called out to drive 7D vehicles. We do not operate 7D vehicles in the city of Gloucester. Those are the vans less than 10 passengers. We outsource all of our 7D transportation, which is foster care, McKinney-Vento, and out of district placement. That is a huge expense. It's not getting any smaller. They're also lacking drivers. Their costs are going up. The expectations in the state of Massachusetts for our 7D vehicle is skyrocketing those costs. Insurance is increasing. By operating your own 7D fleet, you essentially purchase the vans and you hire the employee. And I did it this summer. I kept as much in-house as I could and reduce those costs. The amount that you're not spending on all that additional stuff, you could almost cut it by half of that cost. And it's also a program where in my last district, we operated vans, there was no 7D type system. But all your new drivers that you're coming on as training right now can drive those 7D vehicles.
Class D
It's like a
license
10-hour
only, right?
class.
Is the Class D license and then?
It's a 7D certificate, it's like a 10-hour class,
Okay.
and then they can drive those. It's not a CDL. They can drive those, you can hire them, you can pay them a little bit less than a bus driver, train them in between their routes, and then get them the program going through. But we have a lot of additional foster care students out of district, a lot of out of district placements that we're sending out, which comes with a huge cost every day. So it's just one of my suggestions of trying to get that running and started.
Is there state, when there is that level of students going out of the district for foster care and other, is there any state reimbursement of transportation costs for that kind of thing?
The out of district, I think, falls under, I reported for, what is it called here?
Circuit breaker?
Yes,
So that is
they
included?
do some of that in there, and I
In
think
the
they
circuit
included bus monitors in that reimbursement.
But that's
Foster
only
care,
for a certain.
Yeah.
That's not.
first, McKinney-Vento, under the law is that, it's cost share is built into the law, so if we have a student residing in PBD and they're coming here, I charge PBD 50% for that, no questions asked. They would do the same for us. In 2015, they removed foster care out of the McKinney-Vento Act, so now foster care is funded 100% by the District of Origin. It used to be in there, the federal government separated. So now we fund 100% of all foster care students placed
Placed outside.
outside of us.
And Adam, can you just speak a little bit about how you're seeing that increase, like just over the past year or so, in terms of foster care? Those, we've had more placements in foster care, and therefore our transportation costs are going up. Can you just comment on that? a
So
little bit?
that's, I mean, we've got students, maybe 45 minutes to an hour away coming in. I just have 2 more that I've got to add to transportation as of yesterday, so I think we're at 10 or 15, and it continues to go up, and that's
So they're
just,
leaving the district. to
they're
go to-
getting placed out of the district under DCF
Yeah.
custody,
Yeah.
but they're still attending.
So they're, so just so I'm clear, so they're children who were living in Gloucester, who are being placed with families outside of Gloucester, but are still attending Gloucester school, so therefore have to be transported back.
And you're seeing an increase in, like by how much?
I mean, we started the school year right off with, I think, 6 or 7, I think we're at 12 or 13.
Wow. Wow.
But to the degree that, let's say we do have a fleet of 70 vehicles, are they in any way geographically located where there's still the ability that a vehicle could?
Yeah, you route them a certain way, you could get Peabody, Danvers, Middleton, or you could do Haverhill, come back in town, or wherever you
Okay,
go.
The other piece on that is, also, if we're, as we're contracting out, at that point, we're beholden to whatever folks want to charge us. They basically, it's, and as Adam is saying, they're charging quite a bit, and there are also not many people bidding for those, that work. So those folks who are bidding can charge a premium.
And they're lacking help, as well, just like us. So, what we used to pay maybe $225 for a student to be transported to a school, we're now looking at $365
Per day?
a day.
Wow.
You must start a transportation company.
Get some electric vehicles, get moving.
Technology, continually add to the technology in school buses. Again, with our routing software, you have multiple components, right? 360 is one of those. You can add those GPSs on the bus. And they also have Tyler Drive, which is basically an iPad that's mounted to, in accordance with state laws, mounted to the window. It's a turn-by-turn directions route sheet, which will tell the driver where they're supposed to go. But it also has a component where you can have students scan on and off the bus. So when they pop on the bus, they scan, it pops up red, and you're not supposed to be on here in accordance with the transportation stuff. It pops up with their picture and says where they're supposed to go. You can override that if it's a student that has a note that they're supposed to be going over to somebody's house. But they have that technology out there. It's just putting it into place.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be looking at doing a school bus bid in the next year or so. That may be something you wanna look at.
Do our current ones, beside, I know we don't have the ability to write 360, but do you have GPS track capabilities of our bus currently? Really? Huh.
Nope.
Okay.
And we do have Ride 360?
We're starting it, just getting it put into place.
We don't have the transponders required for the GPS.
Right. And what's the timeline for the Ride 360?
So we have training the next couple of weeks, and then I'm hoping to get it put out by the end before I leave.
Okay. And then you have to, get people to sign up for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bell times is something that Ben and I have talked about and kind of gone back and forth about. As a transportation director, it's always, I don't want to say transportation rules the rules, but transportation really should dictate bell times rather than schools dictating transportation times. We're finding that this year, that 30 minutes between each school is just not enough time to get with additional students on the buses. The mass construction that's going on in this, Sumner Street was closed, it's been closed for 3 days now. We didn't know that we now have to reroute a bus. This little bit of change takes a lot of time. If you have 10 stops, you average 3 to 5 minutes at a stop, you're already way beyond the 30 minutes minus travel time. So we've got buses that are going from O'Malley to Magnolia, coming back to Beaman, supposed to be in 30 minutes, going back out to downtown, and then they've got to get back from downtown over to West Parish. So that is something that I've suggested to Ben, is that really look at the tier system, what schools are in each tier, how you can adjust that end time. Mornings seem to be a little bit better, but that afternoon end time of not having that specific 1:55, 2:30, and 3 o'clock end time, that's just a very small period of time to get that many kids home.
Right, with the O'Malley's, day being longer than the elementary schools, which is fine. it converges in the afternoon, that distance shortens. And, talking to Adam, we just started talking about, like, is this even, especially because, we've been quite successful in getting more kids on the bus this year than before, right? And so that's a very good thing, as we've all been striving for, but it definitely does. And also with fewer bus drivers than we want, the routes are, full, or many of those routes are full. And so we really, in some ways, the release times, dismissal times are making it's a structural problem, that
Right, so
no
if we
matter
have
how
more bus
good
drivers
Adam.
and more routes.
What's that?
Yeah, you can solve that with if you had more bus drivers, which just seems to be an ongoing issue that we have. If you had more bus drivers, you could easily take that tier 2 school and make those bus drivers do just those tier 2s, so that they're going from O'Malley to Magnolia to West Parish, they're bypassing,
Right.
But because of the geographical layout of everything, trying to get from one end of town to the other, with a
Sure.
bridge that goes up every 5 minutes and construction and traffic.
Yeah.
There was
Bridge
just a
is
lot of
sending me to
constraints.
Florida.
Would it be
I can't
helpful-
deal with the bridge, moving to Florida.
Would it be helpful if,
It gets better.
and I don't know how easy this is, but I would hope it would be easy. It would be helpful if you received, a daily or weekly report of police detail scheduled, because any sort of major road construction requires a police detail.
Usually, once in a blue moon, they'll call.
But I'm saying,
It would be
if the
wonderful.
mayor, for example,
That's what it was.
instructed the police department, hey, I'd like you to please share your detail for road closures with
Yeah.
the transportation director every Monday or something, would that be useful information?
It would be. I think also would be useful, and I think the DPW tried, is that if it's a road the buses travel, they stop whatever at 2:30 or whenever the bus is supposed to be coming through there. The Summer Street tree cutting was supposed to be done at 2:30. The bus went through with O'Malley, got partway down there, and then had to be backed out onto Essex Ave.
Oh, my
Oh, my
goodness.
gosh.
And then we have a half day on Tuesday, so that screwed
Sure.
everything up, so the bus drivers had to do the routes backwards. We didn't know they were only supposed to be there for Monday, they were there today, so we had to kind of do a weird thing. So I think that communication is key, to make sure that we know where, we can on a fly change our routes to go.
Okay.
And Adam, sorry, Adam, who's the main contact there? Is it Janine or is it somebody else?
Usually it's just whoever the officer in charge or whoever the officer at the desk is, usually
Oh, okay.
give us a call at some point.
Okay. Got it. So you're talking about the details as opposed to
Yeah.
DPW, right?
Because sometimes it's not, I'm not DPW gets involved in every single one, sometimes it's privately contracted work.
Right.
I'm putting an addition on my house and today's the day that the modular shows up in the truck, and so I have a detail schedule. DPW is not necessarily involved, but the police certainly know about it because they're the ones blocking the road.
Right.
Yeah, we've run into that a couple times, and they've even been short that they don't have the detail out there, so they can't get it down, and so. And then obviously staffing and facility is a huge area. I've recommended to Ben, as we talked about, that I'm the only one in the office. It's one of those, it's hard to be able to do everything at the same time and answer the radio, answer the phone, and be able to get everything done. I could be out in the bus lot taking care of an issue and the phone's ringing, or there's an accident occurring, somebody's gonna be at the office. So I recommended, I think that they've taken that, is that really needs to be 2 people in that office, at least somebody administratively to take some of that work load off, and to be able to have somebody in the office at all times. And then obviously our mechanic is there. And then the facility, we're very spread out in transportation. We have unprotected buses in O'Malley. We have a garage that's 3.5 miles away on a dirt road at the end of the road in a quarry, at the end of Pond Road.
Oh,
And then our office is in the basement that we have a hard time getting traffic in and out of there even sometimes because it's also used as a playground.
Basement
So
which building?
mainly, we're in the basement of O'Malley. We share the space with the Emergency Operations Center, so whenever they're there, we kind of haven't been there very much lately because they've kind of shifted roles, but whenever they're there, we get put on the back burner, so. Just some of those things that, we've talked to Ben about, and bring up some things. We did do an RFP this year for a new garage. There's just place in town is just not, the fire department found one, which is great. We just need to find one for transportation.
So can I just ask a clarifying question? So you have a place at the end of Pond Road.
Yep.
You have O'Malley's parking lot, where I know some buses have been damaged. And that's where the buses are?
So the buses are there if they need repair or they gotta go to the garage, they drive all the way up to the end of Pond Road.
But then the driver's there and needs to be driven back by
Yeah,
the mechanic drives back to Pond Road, it's not the height of.
Have you guys considered reaching out to Applied Materials in Happy Valley, see if you can get a key card to use the access road that connects Blackburn Industrial Park to Pond Road?
we've looked at that area.
It's a windy hill. I don't think
Yeah.
the bus can go down that yet, but
Oh my gosh.
there's again, it's still, it alleviates, it reduces the problem, not eliminate the problem of the fact that you're still in Paul Button's quarry, but.
Yeah.
You know,
In the very end, in
Who's
the
kind enough to rent it out to the
half
city, you
share
know?
garage, yeah.
right,
We have where the concrete line goes, we're on the left, the right, and someone else is on the left, so.
you can see us in time.
Could you send this
Yeah,
presentation
yeah,
to us, please?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That would be really helpful. I took notes, but.
Could I also learn how Adam did such a great looking presentation with all the cute graphics and I never have been able to do that? Could I also
It's a
someone?
great question.
Especially the administrative help.
Right, exactly. And especially because like 2 days ago, this wasn't what it looked like and now it looks fantastic. But anyway, Adam, we'll talk about that.
Great presentation.
It was great.
He's really just kind of rubbing the salt in the wounds that he's leaving. You
Right.
know?
This was courtesy of Orange County.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
look what you're missing. Yeah,
Gosh,
thank
God,
you.
that was,
Thank
Come on, Ben, you gotta hold your staff together.
you.
You got buried in the O'Malley basement dealing with the Bloomin' Bridge via radio. No wonder he's out of here.
folks, there's a fair number, there's a fair bit of truth to that.
Yeah. Florida, Disney.
All right,
Ben has found my office once, so that's good.
Wow.
I'm cool with
All
that.
right.
Coming free.
Yeah, thank you, Adam.
Really appreciate it.
Which is more than other folks, correct, Adam?
Right.
It's,
When you get to start 360, Ride 360, please make, I would love to share it on the school committee Facebook group and sort of push
Once
it
we get
out.
the address and everything, I'll get it out.
I'd love to help push
That'd be
that out.
great.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Ben, you good?
I'm hanging in there. Sorry.
No,
No,
it's
it's-
all right. You don't feel well.
I had a mask on, you couldn't tell.
I know.
All right.
So what else we got? We got review of scheduled annual presentations.
All right.
Adam, I think you're good to go, buddy. And we're gonna keep
Yeah.
Greg here as long as we can.
Do you want to go the other way? Do you want to go the other way? I can keep backing up if Greg gets to leave, if attendance works.
Yeah,
Then
Greg,
we-
you have Greg do attendance works and then
All right,
I
fine.
think he sent
Let's
us.
do that.
Yeah, I saw the share come through.
Let's see.
We just touched
All right, thank you.
the ESER 3 money
Here we go, attendance.
in light of what Adam just said.
and just before Adam, thank you. In all seriousness, Adam, thank you for very, thank you before. Thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for being able to continue to strengthen our program, strengthen our operations. Even when we don't have, you and I have talked about the systems needed and developing systems and procedures and processes. You continue to do that, which I appreciate a ton. And then also, and I think, and also being able to communicate all the different pieces that you've been working on, but also the place we need to go so well tonight. So I just really thank you for that time, energy to put into that and for coming tonight. Appreciate it a lot.
Adam, are you involved at all in the search for a replacement for you?
Yeah.
Yes.
So just an update on that. We have 2 finalists who are interviewing this week and next week. And Adam and myself and Dan Jewett are doing the final round. The first round was done by Greg. No,
Harry and Katie. Gary and Katie.
Gary and Katie, sorry, Gary and Katie. Because special education being a big piece of it, as of course, as is operations and finance. And then now we're going to have Adam in there and also a school principal. So.
Great, thanks for the update.
I don't mind keeping the schedule the same if Ben's not feeling well and maybe he could go early. I'm totally fine with that. Would you,
Will you sit out attendance works if we do your schedule first and let you out?
I have full confidence in Greg to deliver anything, so.
I can do
Right.
the attendance work.
Right.
I'm fine, 'cause,
Let's stick with it as is.
All right,
All right.
thank you, Greg, appreciate that.
Part of Ben's workman's comp claim that we had him work arduous hours under severe illness.
So the
Run
schedule
back
is-
as soon as possible.
Yeah, it was in the last agenda set, right, got it.
So you should have in your packets,
Yeah.
at least digital, or, and I can present if you want me to. Do you need me to present
we
that?
Okay,
Okay, great. So, what you're seeing is sort of a draft that Jonathan and I worked up together. There've been some changes as sort of things just adjust during the year. But, we've tried to lay out presentations for the rest of the year here and give a balance between operations and budget, obviously, and you see the typical timeline for budget process. But then also giving as well updates along the year on various aspects related to learning and student achievement. So I don't know what's helpful. You guys can obviously read it. I don't need to go through month by month, but just the general approach here is to have that combination, that variety over the course of the year. Some things, budget process obviously has a certain time of the year. Enrollment report, we can never do that until partway through October at least, because those first enrollment numbers are due to DESE on October 1st. We need to do capital planning, some modulars very soon because of, just related to sort of, fiscal issues, and, wanting to get some approval on funding before the end of the fiscal year on those. And then as we, continue on into the budget process, and then trying to give you some sort of regular updates on some of the more significant program areas, or like vocational education, special education, and then continue on learning really sort of throughout the year. So you see different pieces on reports on either benchmark reports or MCAS, and you see those across K to 8 really as the year goes along. So, and then I also tried to give there's a little space in the springtime for as things come up or as things have to shift in some of those scheduled dates in terms of inventory, in terms of like what we have planned at this point. And then you can see, try to lay out a couple ideas for the major subcommittees on the second page there. So let me I'll pause there and open to suggestions, but also happy to answer questions.
So I know we recently changed a few of this, for example, the superintendent's evaluation is now tied into the school year. That was a major change we made recently. I mean, is there something, that you were seeing on the administration end that you think is, not making sense?
You mean, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So I guess I'm asking you, do you see something that looks like you go, I don't know why I'm talking to you guys about X, Y, and Z in December when that's really important to you in March, or vice versa?
Yeah, no, I mean, I really, so the way we built this was looking at, I think there might have been a prior years we looked at, and Greg and I looked at it together first, and there were a number of things where like, that doesn't make sense, or what is that, or that's all, that seems like so we made some adjustments there, and then shared it with the principals, and actually, our leadership during the summertime, and made some adjustments from that. And then just recently made some further adjustments based on what we've been able to do or not able to do this fall so far. So no, this is really, at this point, current thinking, looks best for a so-called regular school year. But I think there'll be adjustments as we go, and we'll learn, did some of these things fit this, this time this year, and then make adjustments for next year. But this is sort of I think our best thinking at this point.
So can I just ask a few questions? And, you know, I haven't been in the regular rhythm because the last 2 years, we weren't in the regular rhythm, and this was my first term.
Yeah.
So just a couple things, you know, especially since we're still, as my understanding is for the CBTE program, we're still in the exploration phase of adding a new program, right? We were looking at the healthcare possibility.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so I'm just wondering the timing of this in January, is that the right timing for us to get a report on where we are on that?
that's a good question. You know, that's a great question. You know, and as I think you know, and we're gonna formally accept the grant next week at school committee. You know, we've been awarded a significant grant to accelerate that, you know, to really act on that exploration and then ultimate expansion, right? And that's gonna, so I believe we're advertising for a new CBT director right now. I think that's live. So I think you're right that, you know, when that person comes on, it may make some sense to wait a little bit before, you know, we put them in front of all, you know, we make some progress on that. So, so that's a good point, that's something that it may make sense to, because of this new grant and this new position coming on board, that may make sense to, you know, put that further down the road.
Just because I think we're gonna want to sort of get some information, and if we've got the funding and the interest, get that sort of in place for the next school year, right?
So no, just to remind you is that,
Or the year after.
yeah, it's a process that
Okay,
next year we'll be applying to the state
okay,
to, so this year we're getting up and running, we're doing due diligence to figure out what kind of program would make sense, would be appealing, would it benefit. Next year, we apply to the state to launch that, and the following year we launch that. So
okay.
we were the work we're doing this year, which is that exploration about which is the appropriate program or best program, that wasn't going to start till a
Right,
year
the
from
following
now.
year.
Yeah,
Okay.
so-
And my other sort of thing I just want to notice, because I'm, you know, so we have modulars at Beaman and Plum Cove being discussed on the 27th of October. Based on construction schedules and, you know, when school is out, I really like to be sure that we get the playgrounds on the schedule as well. Because I just don't want those to get left and us to be later in the year and we don't have time to get ready to get those under construction.
Sure. So let me, again, as I said earlier, want to follow up with principals and understand, you know, how, you know, what's a good way for them to approach it in combination with PTOs and other parents. And then let me come back with you to you with and really probably through building and finance, a timeline for that. I don't really have any idea what the timeline would be on that at this point. We haven't, you know, dug into that at all. So, but let me.
Right, no, I'm aware, I want to sort of keep it a little bit front.
And just to touch on that, I was thinking about this more over at the Oval. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago. They rebuilt the Oval playground,
Yeah.
and literally it was done in a weekend.
Really?
Because they're like, hey, anyone wants to volunteer? We're building the playground Saturday and Sunday. Come out. And there was the people there from like the playground facility kind of leading it, and then people, you know, I don't even recall signing a waiver, to be honest, but like,
Well,
but they still they showed up. I'm not saying the Oval playground was put together, I think, in a weekend.
right, they don't have to, they may not need the same codes and.
No, well, no, I mean, it was a city-owned property, right? All I'm saying is that
Yeah, no, it can be
a
done.
playground does not need to be a huge thing. It's gonna be a really simple, like,
That's my hope. That's my hope.
They're expensive,
They're
but
expensive, but
yeah. I was gonna donating a piece, and I was like, oh, I can't do that.
that's fine.
So I've never been involved in rebuilding playgrounds, so I don't know much about it, and I don't know timeline or cost. I know a little bit of cost looking at the preschool playground, and I don't really know if, you know, the $100,000 we have set aside for each one will be sufficient for what we want to do. So again, want to figure out, you know, get some more details and then come back with a timeline and an approach on how to do this.
That's great, and just,
yeah.
and I do appreciate you going to the schools, because I know for a fact the Beaman PTO has put together different budgets over the years on what this costs. They've done the research. There is information.
Show some money there, fix up West Parishes was already pulling up.
I have a
Um,
question.
yeah.
So we get an update from the YMCA, right? Does it make sense to think about other community organizations that we should get an update from? You know, I'm thinking like Unity is part of JRI, which is a new sort of drop-in clinic for adolescents and teenagers in Gloucester. They're doing a ton of good work. For me, I think it would just be helpful, like maybe even with the social emotional update, maybe have some sort of mental health clinic or some other community organization that has a pulse on sort of what the needs are in the community to just sort of go hand in hand with our updates. I don't know, but I think if we are connecting with the YMCA, and I know they provide programming for us, but I'm wondering if there's anybody else that we would want to hear from throughout the year.
Yeah, those are helpful suggestions. And if you think of other ones, please just pass them along. But I think that's appreciated and very helpful. I think, Jonathan brought to my attention of just the need, that it's been done in the past, partner presentations, and we need to continue to do it for lots of good reasons. And so, definitely want to have other organizations, that are working with us on an ongoing basis, be able to inform the committee and the community about the work. So that's very helpful.
So I have kind of a broader suggestion or concern. And one of the things that I've found very inefficient about the way we run our full school committee meetings and the way we receive these presentations is they're always given as if no one's done the reading, right? And we're all adults in the school committee, we're all provided information ahead of time. I think there would be a much better result if nothing came in, there was zero presentation. But if the people presenting on these issues came in assuming that the school committee has done the reading for the day, like a professor would hope that their students have done the reading for the day, and we're going to get into a discussion. I'll give a brief presentation that touches upon some of the most important things, but I'm not going to go through, if there's 20 things in this report, I'm not going through 20 of them. I'm going to touch on the 4 or 5 that are most crucial. I'm going to expect the other 15 you've read about. If you have questions about them, bring them up. And if you're okay with them, we're moving forward, because it's like there's so much time spent. At least I feel like I've sat here for years having things presented to me that I'm like, yeah, I know, I read this. Yes, I know. And I appreciate there's to a degree there is informing the public, but again, we are not holding meetings for the benefit of the public. We are holding meetings to conduct the business of the school committee in public. And we can do a better job of making sure the materials that we read in our packet are available. And so I would consider, I hope the school committee would consider streamlining presentations to assume the audience has done the reading.
So I think that is in part a communications issue. We don't always get the presentations 3 days in advance.
Fair.
So if I get a presentation that afternoon, I cannot guarantee that I will have carefully read it. And that has happened. Yeah.
I agree with that.
So that would mean that we have, and I understand people are doing a million things, right? They can't get their PowerPoint ready for us. But I agree with you, but we would need then, Joel, to have it available for the public, right? The presentations, like we need to have
Sure.
communications set up, because it is in part communicating to the public and to us.
But at least these are right here, right? So this would be the low hanging fruit. We know now, and if we agree to this calendar, we know now in October that by February 9th, we're getting the K-5 learning benchmarks presentation. So we know by February 5th, that needs to be pushed out to the committee, right? Like I appreciate when things come up in the moment, or like when I throw an agenda together, with Ben over the weekend and say, hey, Adam, can you please come in and give us a presentation? He goes, well, it's not a lot of time for Adam to put one together. Like, I appreciate that, but these are the routine annual presentations that we get, and we know months, if not almost a full school year in advance when they're showing up. If the expectation is just set that the information will be disseminated to us several days ahead of time, and when we get to the meeting, we are not going to rehash everything that was in there. We're going to have a functional discussion and conduct the business of the school committee on that topic.
So I would like to go to Greg and Ben on this, because my sense in part, and A, is that realistic from your perspectives to have these, reliably to us a few days ahead of time, or is it really not a realistic ask?
So I want to just, so first of all, it's a important ask, and I just want to remind folks that this is still not a normal year, and there's a whole level of additional work that Greg and myself and Adam and principals and the folks, Gary, the folks who Jeff Parko, the folks who put together and present a lot of this stuff, are doing on top of our regular work. And that layer, of course, is COVID. And I can't tell you how many hours every single day, where I'm spending on decision making, like troubleshooting pool testing, for example, okay, or communicating about, so that's not I want that to be an explanation about, I think for this year, like, first of all, this schedule ahead of time, built during the summertime, is intended to do just what you're asking for. Have our whole team know it's coming up, and try to stick to it. So that, and to help that, I just want to be realistic with you in terms of whether or not this year is the year we're going to be providing, presentations 4 days, 5 days, a week in advance. I don't want to promise that, because I think it's unlikely. We want to.
But Ben, hold up. But if the deadline is February 9th, and and everyone knows it's February 9th in October, what's the big deal about getting it out February 6th? Why are they waiting until February 8th to put it together? If they know they have, if anything, you make a shadow calendar, right? Deadline's February 9th, so deadline's really February 6th, right? It's the same. It's the same exercise.
Every single day right now, okay, this year, related to the pandemic, not only health stuff, but also behavioral stuff, parents or students throwing surprises at us, so we have to then drop everything and do, I'm agreeing with the intent here. I don't want to promise something that I can't deliver on. Okay. So I want to be realistic with all of you about, and again, let's be clear. The intention is to get them into ahead of time. And that's why we create this. But the number of things that just are popping up because related to the pandemic in some way, shape, or form, is still to a level that it waylays a lot of work in advance. I just want to be real about that.
But the same thing could happen day of, right? If it's the February 9th deadline and everything hits the fan on the 8th, then there's no presentation on the 9th, right? Like, that's understandable. That's what happens, right? Hey, listen.
You might be staying up until, midnight to get a presentation done for the next day.
But if you're gonna stay up till midnight on the 8th, stay up till midnight on the 6th, or don't stay till midnight, right?
I think what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling is that that can be a goal, right? But I think I see it also, on a day-to-day level. I think I hear what Ben's saying. Like, we can make that a goal, but this may not be the year to make, because what do we want them spending their time on?
What's their priority?
Perfecting our PowerPoint.
But they're gonna spend it either way. Either spend it on Monday, or they spend it on,
But these are adult professionals, like
exactly, which is why you can say, hey, listen, I want 3 days ahead of time, figure it out. Right?
Yeah.
Again, I appreciate this in the public sector. In the private sector, you just say the deadline's 3 days before the meeting, the end. And the night to stay up late is not the night before the meeting, it's the night 3 days before the meeting, if you have to stay up late for the presentation. Or you don't do it, you say, hey, listen, stuff came up, it's COVID.
I think Greg wants to talk.
Sorry, Greg.
How about we do this? How about we, for the ones that are a ways off now, we take a close look at what could conceivably delay those. So for example, given that, I would want to go back and look at the midwinter benchmark report out, because I know that they're finishing data meetings and data analysis. So with that in mind, I'd want to go back, ask the coaches, if it's a week prior, do you have enough time to crunch the numbers?
Right.
Because we actually do fit them in kind of tight after them. So if we did that, really on some of these things, maybe we can pick some key things that are very predictable and aren't dependent on another piece being there, and that involves coaches and everything, everybody helping me put it together. I would have no problem looking at that, and if they said, sure, we could get it done a week early and just put it on the calendar.
I understand, as Ben said, like COVID is a nightmare,
Yeah.
as it's just school, right? Oh my God, there was a huge behavioral incident at school today that
So-
detonated Principal Beatty's ability to get to her presentation, like, of course.
So I have no problem setting that as a goal, and I think there are some presentations that lend themselves more to doing a data presentation. To me, seems to be a good one, that the public might not love hearing all of that. There are some things that are very much part of communication to the public.
Yes.
And I think we gotta do that for their sake. If there's this much data and this kind of discussion and summary and analysis that we can then talk about and share, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. So I'd like to go back with Ben, go over these, and maybe for this year, we can identify some key sort of anchor ones where we'll say, yep, we're gonna do this a week early, and we're gonna have a different kind of discussion. So I think it also makes sense to try this out on a number of high win, high return ones. And then we could move toward it the following year. But I agree with you. I think there's value in, frankly, I'd rather have a good discussion than going through line by line by line.
Mhm.
And so, I'm in agreement. I think we ought to give it a shot. Let's go back and take a look at these.
Yeah, and there's things like data and the budget, right, that I would really like to look at for a couple days ahead of time, because it's not
Yeah.
necessarily something that I'm like super familiar with. So I'd like to be able to get my questions sort of
Yeah,
laid out beforehand. So there's definitely certain topics that I'm like, I don't necessarily need you to send out, something ahead of time.
yeah, some of them are pretty brief
Yeah.
and they are summary level.
Right.
So
Sure,
the professional development, for example,
Yeah.
because of the nature of this year and the fact that it's falling right now, is going to be a fairly short, sort of high level kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So that would be one you don't have to analyze for days, but I agree, I think, maybe Ben, that's something we can look at next week is, these really make sense, they're heavy on data, heavy on reading. And we'll give those a shot.
yeah, because you run into that problem of like, I can't stand when we get the, well, we've been at this for 15 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, it was a 35-minute presentation, we've only actually been at this for 15.
Right.
Like, yeah, I appreciate
No,
the
it's a
agenda.
hard, it's a hard balance. It's a hard
And again, hopefully for improving our ability to communicate in alternative ways,
Yeah,
I'm certainly in no way looking to remove the ability for the public
right.
to receive this information. I'm just saying, again, this meeting is the business of the school committee in public.
Right.
And there's other ways to make sure they are well informed as is the committee. But-
No, I appreciate that.
And honestly, it doesn't affect me. That's, you guys have been sitting through this long
Yeah,
meeting.
it's true.
But like, I just
But I
can't.
know, but I think we lose our ability to communicate. When we have these super long
Yeah.
presentations, we get tired, the public turns off, like, there is a cost benefit with all of it. So,
I'd like to spend more time asking questions and.
yeah.
Right, so yeah, I read
We'll
through
try
the
this.
charts.
I think the compromise you're suggesting,
Yeah,
Greg,
I
makes a
think
lot of
that's great.
sense. Okay,
That's it.
Yep.
Anyone else?
No, thank you. I get back to my agenda here.
all right.
So what's our last one? Oh, attendance ones, right? So thank you, Ben.
Folks, I'm gonna sign off. Thank you for your input. Very
Yeah, feel
appreciate it.
better.
All right,
Feel
thank
better.
you.
Thanks for sending me ahead of time.
Also, we gotta figure out how to get them on the drive,
Like, yeah, tell me about it. I can't.
how to get them. I mean, I just have to go through these emails
I
onto the.
can't.
That's true. And so on the city side, this thing is one of the biggest disconnects in the city is like certain departments have figured stuff like we've crushed how to do a meeting in person, broadcast via
Right.
Zoom. And the fact that every other municipal board isn't doing what we're doing and they're using our rig to do it is bonkers, right? Similarly, there are other boards that have figured out. So for instance, if you go like the Concom, Planning Board, Zoning Board, full applications are in a public, you go to like the planning board's page, says click to access the Google Drive. So anybody can get in and see what their
We need
neighbor
that.
filed,
We
right?
need everything. I can't find it. I mean.
And
I
then
can-
things are updated for that meeting, they get added to that file. Anybody in the public, so it'd be a great way to communicate with the public saying, hey, you want to see we're discussing a school committee? here's the link to the Google Drive on
Right,
gloucesterschools.com,
so
and here's the meetings.
So that may be a communications.
We have to
Subcommittee
get back to
issue.
that.
But again, it's like, it's not really anything to do. The city's already figured out how to do it in other
Yeah, so
departments.
we'll find
We just
out
have to
who
like do what they're doing. You know?
Ben's very good at Drive too. Okay,
All right,
All right, sorry.
down the back stretch here.
yeah,
So tenants works timeline, we
yeah,
bumped the timeline a little bit because
We're trying to stay home.
we
Yeah, it's enough of being absent.
it's really making us a challenge to, last year we decided not to do it because we didn't want to be saying, stay home, stay home, stay home. Oh, and it's important to be in school. So I gotta say, it's complicating the messaging.
sure,
So we moved the process a little bit later to let principals sort of re-engineer their schools around,
right,
hybrid COVID response, or a modified. And so we're doing a lot of the data collection analysis now. And the messaging would come in the spring. We may have to have modified messaging this year with a full phase in for the following year.
sure,
So here's what it looks like for now. We did an RFP over the summer. We secured the contract in sort of mid to late July and met with leadership at the July retreat, the end of July. We started in earnest in September by forming the district and the school teams. Just each, as a requirement and as best practice, each school has to create an attendance team that may include a principal, adjustment counselor, a nurse, people involved, a secretary, people involved, and a teacher on both monitoring attendance, but also thinking of the kinds of interventions necessary, the kind of resources and support. So everybody has to have a team, and the district put together a team. And the district team composition looks like this. These are Amy Kim, Katie Provo, Special Education Director, Gail Avery, Attendance Supervisor, Chris Castle, Title I EL Family Outreach, Jeff Parko, District Nurse Leader, Mike Committee's Data Manager, and then we have a principal of an elementary school and assistant principal. So we try to get
right,
really broad
He's volunteering for everything, in the hiring committee.
coverage. So we've got, key people. Nurses are often the first line, and so Jeff's there as well. And everybody's been showing up, and even though they're incredibly busy. So we have the district team. We provided data to Attendance Works in end of August, early September. This is the request. It was pretty extensive. Policies, protocols, handbooks, demographics, attendance data, communications, initiatives we have like PBIS, superintendent's buy. It was a lot to scramble to
Right.
get together during the last week of August. So got that off to them. They then did surveys during the second week of September, and I'm just gonna give you a brief glimpse of it, just so you get an idea of just how thorough they are, and this survey is. This is the basis, the survey was built off of this. So it had a number of domains around capacity building, with ratings, and everybody had to provide ratings for all of these. And if you take a look at this, it's has to do with policies, skills, knowledge base. There's a lot in each one of these domains, and this is around our data. Not the data that we have, but how we collect it, our systems that are in place. Access to data, regular analysis of data, monitoring. That's another domain. positive engagement, you could spend, I mean, we could spend a year on any one of these
Right.
Right.
pages. So this is gonna be a multi-year
Yeah.
approach. I mean, look at just any one of these, home visits, outreach and family engagement step, hiring, who we're hiring. This is pretty far reaching. Personalized early outreach to families, flexibility, flexible schedules, just so strategic partnerships as they analyzes our partnerships within the city. And really made us think through really carefully the kinds of partnerships and how we're using them. And then we're down to resourcing. Just number one, our district has mapped school district and community-based resources to promote attendance. I mean, just putting together an inventory of everything throughout our city. And there are a lot of agencies that have a hand in this. So there's a lot. Shared accountability. And so this was the basis of the survey. And we are, let me go back to this. We provided those, then Attendance Works has completed interviews of all principals, Zoom face-to-face live interviews with all members of the district team, superintendent. And then we began our self-analysis, our district team. Attendance Works is going to present their preliminary findings and recommendations on October 23rd, I believe, to the district team. Then they're going to meet in November with all 7 school teams to begin talking about, based on their needs assessment, where do we begin providing training. So they're gonna train first,
Right.
based on the information they gathered, and those will be dedicated sessions where they might identify a particular domain. So this is what we're gonna go with 3 high leverage strategies for engaging parents in discussions around attendance. And then we'll do mini seminars on those with the school teams. So they call them capacity building sessions. And then they're going to be all together when all teams come together to share the different pieces that they have employed and how they're using them. So to facilitate district team meetings based on what's going on out there and what the district can be doing. And then monthly community practice sessions, so they'll be checking in and keeping the teams on track and accountable. And then in March, we'll review again strategies, and then May, what are we going to be doing in the summer, and then the fall to get ready. So it's an ambitious schedule. It's made a little bit harder by the many of the things people are engaged in.
Right.
But I had to decide whether to continue or not continue. Figured we might as well do the groundwork this year, get it all ready, get the practice built up to a level, begin experimenting with some things, and then have a real concerted rollout in the fall. And if we were just rolling out in the fall, it would be sort of our first time through. So I think it makes sense to persist and try to push through and get this done. So the goal is that after the end of the year, they tee us up for success going into the end of the year, and then probably some check-ins after that, but not this intensive schedule.
Right.
So we will share after we get the district team report from Attendance Works. This would be a great place to share their findings, and this would be a great place to report out on how are we doing on this schedule and what does it look like when we find it. We could do periodic updates to this group.
How are they gonna be reporting the findings to you? Are they gonna come in person? Is it gonna be virtual?
It's all virtual
It's all
there on the
virtual.
West Coast.
Oh, okay, I see. Is it something that will be recorded? I'm just sort of curious, like I would love to be able to,
Well, I'll have I can record it. I will also have, they're pretty professional, so they're gonna have, I would imagine, a very good report,
okay,
right?
Okay.
It's pretty easy to share.
that would be easy to share.
Be a lot better probably than
Yeah.
watching it. And there will be more formal kinds of things, a March meeting where there's really a sort of what's the state of what you've been able to do this year and where you're headed. I mean, they're gonna provide pretty good reports along the way.
Yeah, great.
And then we should get that on the calendar at times that make
Yeah,
sense.
I think what we have to do is check in after, so I'm looking at these and thinking, probably a really good time would be after the December, best practice sessions have been done, after they've conducted their capacity building with each of the schools and then they come back to the district. It's a good report out moment. And then I think another one is in March after they've been doing, the spring kind of work, and there's that district team meets who could report out after that.
So how do we get that on the calendar?
I think what we ought to do is, I'd like to see their October report.
Yeah.
See if they have any adjustments to their work plan. Because they adjusted their work plan in September based on the fact that we were looking at a different kind of school year.
Right.
And so I think what I would see is, what does it look like? And I'm happy to check in with you and say, I think we're on schedule with this current plan, or they've moved it all a month. And then we could target a couple of them.
As attendance works as part of this discussed, what you had kind of shared about the concept of community involvement and just changing the kind of mantra around the island of like,
Yeah.
absences aren't no big deal,
Right.
right? There's a lot of people, like a lot of parents who just keep a kid home for, unnecessary reasons. And
It's a
there's a
cultural
culture.
piece here.
Right, but
No question.
does attendance works subscribe to that, and do they have as part of what they're doing? Or is it still gonna be adjunct by the district to try and?
I've asked them that almost every time I've met with them. I know they're getting tired of hearing from me, and what they keep saying is, please wait until
Yeah.
we've reviewed
They want to look at all.
this initial piece, because we're gonna get to that. So I'm very hopeful, because I having been around here a long time, I feel like we're not gonna get anywhere unless we address that cultural piece, because it's pretty big.
I mean, I want some like rewards, like for instance, if at each school, it's tough because schools have disparate populations, maybe do it as a collective, you just kind of said, every time a student is present, it's a point. So every day, Plum Cove has the ability to score up to 220 points, and it gets aggregated in one big pile, and if we as a district can hit, whatever the hell it's supposed to be, whatever how many hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of presents there are, then there's some sort of a reward. And
I'm sure attendance works has incentives, like, I'm sure they.
right.
have tons of-
And then like you said, maybe putting a sign down the Rotary thing, like, did you know that, currently, like last month we had, a 96% attendance rate, isn't this great? Or that's like, or this was close to our goal of hitting this many presents.
Yeah, no, it's great. Hard to do during COVID.
No, sure, but this rolls up next year.
Yeah.
What we can plan.
And I'm just,
Right.
in order to get to the day, I'm just telling myself, so I'll be fine.
I don't know, COVID might be our like silver lining of parents are just be like, go to school. You cannot stay home another day. All
The
done.
problem is that parents are having more and more challenges. Being tough,
Yeah.
being strict
Sure.
about certain things. I think we've seen that trend growing for a while.
Yeah.
And if kids have gotten used to a certain kind of lifestyle, or not that it's a good lifestyle, but there's a routine.
Yep.
It's really hard to break. So then these clashes happen. Okay, time to go back to school.
Right.
I really like the jammies and I like being home.
That's right.
So, yeah, it's gonna be a challenge.
Yeah.
Should we entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We're in person. All in favor?
Hi.
Bye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
This was a very
I'm gonna wait till, let's see what's right this.